here is a poem about the Great Famine, 1845 to 1850. It's written by O'Donovan Rossa. It's called Jillen Andy. Jillen Andy lived at the other side of the street in Rosscarbery when I was a child. Her husband, Andy Hayes, was a linen weaver and worked for my father before I was born. Andy died before I came into the world. He died too before I came into the world. But when I did come in, I think I formed the acquaintance of Jillen as soon as I did that of my own mother. Jillen was left a widow with 4 helpless children, and all the neighbours were kind to her. The eldest of her sons enlisted, and the first sight I got of a redcoat, of a soldier, was when he came home on furlough. The 3 other sons were Charlie, Ted and Andy. When I was about the age of 12, Charlie was looking at Lord Carberry's hounds hunting one day. Going through some lonesome, airy place, he got a puck from one of the fairies. He came home lame, his leg swelled as big as a pot. It had to be amputated by Dr. Donovan and Dr. Fitzgibbon, and he went about on crutches till he died in 1865. Andy, the second or the third son, enlisted and died in Bombay, and Ted and his mother fell victims to the famine legislation of 1847. Ted met him one day, met the author Donovan Rossa, and spoke to me. I dug and he shovelled up the earth till the grave was about 2 feet deep. Then he talked about it being deep enough, that there would be too great a load on her, and that he could stay up and watch her for some time. By and by we saw 4 or 5 men coming in the church gate with a door on their shoulders, bearing the coffinless Jillen. She was laid in the grave. Her head did not rest firmly on the stone on which it was pillowed, and as it would turn aside and rest on the cheek, when I took my hands away from it, one of the men asked me to hand him the stone. I did so, and covering it with a red-spotted handkerchief which he had taken out of his pocket, he gave it to me again, and I settled Jillen's head steadily on it. Then I was told to loose the strings, to take out a pin that appeared, to lay her apron over her face, and come up. To this day I can see how softly the man, her son Ted, handled the shovel, how quietly he laid the earth down at her feet, but the heap kept rolling and creeping up until it covered her head, and how the big men pulled their hats over their eyes. Jillen Andy, come to the graveyard if you're not afraid. I'm going to dig my mother's grave. She's dead. And I want someone that will bring the spade, for Andy's out of home and Charlie's sick in bed. Ted Andy was a simple-spoken fool, with whom in early days I loved to stroll. He'd often take me on his back to school, and make the master laugh himself, he was so droll. In songs and ballads he took great delight, and prophecies of Ireland yet being freed, and singing them by our fireside at night. I learned songs from Ted before I learned to read. And I have still by heart his Colleen Foon, his Croppy Boy, his Phoenix of the Hall, and I could rise his Rising of the Moon, if I could sing in present cell, or sing at all. He'd walk the eeriest places a moonlight night. He'd whistle in the dark, even in bed. In fairy fort or graveyard, Ted was quite as fearless of a ghost as any ghost of Ted. Now, in the dark churchyard we work away, the shovel in his hand, in mine the spade. And seeing Ted cry, I cried myself that day, for Ted was fond of me and I was fond of Ted. But after 20 years, why now will such a bubbling spring up into my eyelids start? Ah, there be things that ask not leave to touch, the fountains of the eye, or feelings of the heart. This load of clay will break her bones, I fear, for when alive she wasn't over strong. We'll dig no deeper, I can watch her here, a month or so, sure nobody will do me wrong. 4 men bear Jillen on a door, 'tis light, they have not much of Jillen but her frame. No mourners come, for 'tis believed the sight of any death or sickness now begets the same. And those brave hearts that volunteer to touch plague-stricken death are tender as they're brave. They raise poor Jillen from her tainted couch and shade their swimming eyes while laying her in the grave. I stand within that grave, nor wide nor deep, the slender wasted body at my feet. What wonder is it if strong men will weep o'er famine-stricken Jillen in her winding sheet? Her head I tried to pillow on a stone, but it will hang one side as if the breath of famine gaunt into the corpse had blown, and blighted in the nerves the rigid strength of death. Hand me that stone, child. In his hands 'tis placed, down his cheeks are tears like rain. The stone within his handkerchief is cased, and then I pillow it on Jillian's head again. Untie the nightcap string, unloose that lace, take out that pin. There now, she's nicely, rise. But lay the apron first across her face, so that the earth won't touch her lips or blind her eyes. Don't grasp the shovel too tightly, there make a heap. Steal down each shovelful quietly, there let it creep over her poor body lightly. Friend, do not weep, tears would disturb old Jillian in her last long sleep. And Tade was faithful to his watch and ward. Whenever he'd spend, or wherever he'd spend the day, at night he'd haste, with his few sods of turf, to that churchyard, where he was laid himself before the month was past. Then Andy died of soldiering in Bombay, and Charlie died in Ross the other day. Now no one lives to blush because I say that Jillian Andy went uncoffined to Declay. Even all are gone that buried Jillian, save one banished man who dead alive remains. The little boy that stood within the grave stands for his country's cause in England's prison chains. How oft in dreams that burial scene appears, through death, eviction, prison, exile, home, through all the something and moons of 20 years. And oh, how short those years compared with years to come. Some things are strongly on the mind impressed, and others faintly imagined there, it seems. And this is why, when reason sinks to rest, phases of life do show and shadow forth in dreams. And this is why in dreams I see the face of Jillian Andy looking in my own, the poet-hearted man, the pillowcase, the spotted handkerchief that softened the hard stone. Welcome those memories of scenes of youth, that nurse my hate of tyranny and of wrong, that helmed my manhood in the path of truth, and help me now to suffer calmly and be strong.